Hello my diamond art friends, my name is Ilene and welcome to my channel. If you are new to my channel, welcome, and if you are returning, thank you for your continued support and friendship. For this video slash WIP&CHAT, I'm going to do a little WIP&CHAT on 3 Mile Island, which was a nuclear power plant accident that happened in 1979 in Pennsylvania. But before I do that, I thought I would give a little bit of history about the area where 3 Mile Island is located. Londonderry Township is in Dauphin County, Pennsylvania. And currently it says the census is about 5,200 residents. But in 1980, because I couldn't really find a census in 1979, it was recorded that there was 1,293 residents in the area. So the township includes the 3 Mile Island Nuclear Generating Station. And that closed permanently in 2019. But let's go over the history first of the Londonderry Township. It was originally part of Derry Township. Since the township was so large and difficult to govern, the residents petitioned the court in 1667 to subdivide the land into 2 parts. The eastern section remains Derry and the western was to be Londonderry. It is named after County Londonderry in Northern Ireland. Derry and Londonderry became part of Dauphin County when it was established in 1785, and in 1787, the population of Derry Township was 198. London County was created in 1813 and created a new Londonderry Township, which includes the eastern half of the original. Now, Londonderry Township is on the southernmost township in Dauphin County. Its western boundary is the west shore of the Susquehanna River, and the southern border is formed by the Conwago Creek, which is a tributary. The northern boundary of the township follows the Swatara Creek, except where the township abuts the borough of Ruralton. To the west across the Susquehanna is York County, and the south across the Conagua Creek is Lancaster County. There are numerous islands in the Susquehanna River within the township, the largest of which are Hill Island, Shelley Island, 3 Mile Island, and Bashore Island. According to the United States Census Bureau, the township has a total area of 26.9 miles, of which 222.7 miles is land and 4.2 square miles is water. So that's a little bit about the area that is where the 3 Mile Island is located. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about 3 Mile Island now. So 3 Mile Island accident occurred in 1979 at the 3 Mile Island Nuclear Power Plant. The 3 Mile Island Power Station was named after the island on which it was situated in the Susquehanna River near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. On a Wednesday morning at 4 a.m., March 28th, an automatically operated valve in the Unit 2 reactor mistakenly closed, shutting off the water supply to the main feed water system. That's the system that transfers heat from the water actually circulating in the reactor core. This caused the reactor core to shut down automatically. But a series of equipment and instrumental malfunctions, human error in operating procedure, and mistaken decisions in the ensuing hours led to a serious loss of water coolant from the reactor core and a partial core meltdown. I'm about to sneeze. Hold on. Excuse me. Bless me. Kazoom tight. Whatever you want to say. Okay. As a result, the core was partially exposed and the zirconium cladding of its fuel reacted with the surrounding superheated steam to form a large accumulation of hydrogen gas, some of which escaped from the core into the contaminate vessel of the reactor building. Very little of this or other radioactive gases actually escaped into the atmosphere, or they did not constitute a threat to the health of the surrounding population. In the following days, adequate coolant water circulation in the core was restored. Now, there is a Netflix series on this that kind of goes by like day to day and like the aftermath of 3 Mile Island, and it's called Meltdown. So if any of you guys are interested in that, feel free to go and watch it. That's what got me interested in it in the first place. So one of the articles I read said that the accident at 3 Mile Island, though it was considered minuscule in its health consequences, had widespread and profound effects on the American nuclear power industry. It resulted in the immediate, though temporary, closing of 7 operating reactors like those at 3 Mile Island. A moratorium on the licensing of all new reactors was temporarily imposed, and the whole process of approval for new plants by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was significantly slowed for years after the accident. No new reactors were ordered by the utility companies in the United States from 1979 through the mid-1980s. The accident increased public fears about the safety of nuclear reactors and strengthened public opposition to the construction of new plants. The unharmed Unit 1 reactor at 3 Mile Island did not resume operation until 1985. The cleanup of Unit 2 continued until 1990. Damage to the unit was so severe, however, that it remained unstable. Okay, that's just a brief kind of synopsis of what happened, but I do have a little bit more information. So 3 Mile Island, as I said, it happened in 1979, and it was the worst commercial nuclear accident in U.S. history, and it stoked public fears about nuclear power since the accident construction had not begun by any new nuclear power plant sites in the United States. Construction of 3 Mile Island nuclear plant began in 1968 on a small island on the Susquehanna River, just south of the state capital of Harrisburg. Construction ended in 1978 when the second of 2 nuclear reactors at the site came online to produce electricity. Now, there's a thriller film called The China Syndrome that hit theaters in March of 1979. The film, starring Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, and Michael Douglas, dealt with the aftermath of a fictional nuclear meltdown at a reactor outside Los Angeles. The nuclear industry at the time dismissed the China Syndrome plot as far-fetched. Many experts said nuclear meltdowns, where a nuclear reactor overheats, causing radioactive fuel to melt, were almost impossible, calling them black swan events. Now, let's get into what really happened when it melted down and the human errors that they said occurred. Plant staff didn't realize the reactor was experiencing a loss of coolant and took a series of actions that made the problem worse. These further starved the reactor core of water flow and caused it to overheat. The nuclear fuel began to melt through its metal container. About half the reactor core melted. Trace amounts of radioactive gases escaped into the surrounding community as a geyser of steam that erupted through the top of the plant. So that first article said that it didn't go outside of the building, which obviously is not true. The melting fuel created a large hydrogen bubble inside of the unit that officials worried might cause an explosion, releasing even larger amounts of radioactive material. Pennsylvania Governor Dick Thorburg advised pregnant women and preschool-aged children within a 5-mile radius of the plant to evacuate the area. The crisis, they say, ended 3 days later when experts determined that the hydrogen bubble could not burn or explode. Now, because of the 3 Mile Island accident, public support for nuclear energy fell from an all-time high of 69% in 1977 to 46% in 1979. An estimated 2 million people were exposed to a small amount of radiation as the result of the TMI accident, though they claim there are no known health impacts. Several government agencies and independent groups conducted studies, but no adverse effects could be found to correlate to these exposures. Careful analysis of the accident led to sweeping change in the way nuclear plants are regulated in the United States. Federal requirements for safety controls and emergency response planning became more stringent. Sorry, sometimes words make me giggle. And officials imposed a temporary moratorium on licensing of all new reactors. Required design changes after the 3 Mile Island accident resulted in higher costs and longer construction times for new nuclear plants. As a result, construction of nuclear reactors steeply declined. No entirely new nuclear plants started after 1979 have been completed in the United States. Now, the cleanup at 3 Mile Island, the effort lasted 14 years and costed an estimated $1 billion. The damaged reactor was permanently closed and entombed in concrete after the accident. Radioactive fuel and water were removed, and the workers eventually shipped 15 tons of radioactive waste to a nuclear waste storage facility in Idaho. Now, this article said that 3 Mile Island incident helped to galvanize an anti-nuclear movement in the United States. The anti-nuclear movement emerged as a social movement against the global nuclear arms race in the early 1960s at the height of the Cold War. High-profile protests in response to the event took place around the country, including New York City in 1979, which involved about 200,000 people. 3 Mile Island Nuclear Generating Station today generates power from its Unit 1 reactor. The Unit 1 reactor is owned and operated by Exelon Corporation. Exelon announced in 2017 that it would close closed the plant in 2019, dismantling the remaining reactor, and that could take 10 years. Okay, so there was also a whistleblower that kind of is talked about in the 3 Mile Island documentary Meltdown on Netflix. It's a docuseries. So again, it just talks about the actual meltdown itself, that there was a technical malfunction and there was human error by control room workers that misread confusing signals and halted the emergency water cooling system. So it also talks about that Unit 2, the docuseries says that Unit 2 came less than 30 minutes from fully melting down, a disastrous scenario that would have sickened hundreds of thousands in the surrounding area. At the time, the plant's operator, Metropolitan Edison, tried to downplay the risk of the radioactive release, but panic ensued. More than 100,000 people fled the surrounding area. Plant technicians were eventually able to slowly bleed the gas from the cooling reactor, avoiding a deadly explosion. Though workers inside the plant were exposed to dangerous levels of radiation, it remains unknown how much contamination escaped the facility into the surrounding community. Well, that's the story that most Americans will find in the history textbooks. So in the first 2 episodes of Meltdown, they kind of discuss the chilling near miss, as well as the confusion that greatly eroded the public's trust. But it didn't end after the 5-day red alert, or the 5 days they said it lasted. Not for the workers that were tasked with safely cleaning up the molten reactor, nor the surrounding communities that were disillusioned and furious. So the second half of the docuseries takes you to, we're going to call him the whistleblower because he is. So it takes you to Rick Parks, who was a cleanup supervisor turned whistleblower on the WIP&CHAT Corp., the company hired to conduct the billion-dollar cleanup by Metropolitan Edison and supervised by the government's Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So, while a lot of people know about the disaster, they don't know about what happened in the cleanup phase and how come the United States became so close to another disaster. And it does say that thanks to Rick Parks, he actually helped avoid dodging that bullet. So Parks, he's a Missouri native and Navy-trained nuclear operator who provided some colorful, refreshingly straight-shooting narration throughout the series. And he did. It was really, really interesting. He moved to Middletown, Pennsylvania, the town directly adjacent to 3 Mile Island, to work on cleanup 3 years after the incident. At the time, WIP&CHAT was the largest private construction company in the world, with numerous Reagan administration officials on its board. The cleanup was risky, arduous, and behind schedule. WIP&CHAT received funds upon completion of individual tasks, incentivizing the company and its hirers, General Public Utilities, or GPU, to cut corners and ignore the NRC regulations. Parks was particularly alarmed by rushed off-book repairs to the polar crane damaged by radioactivity. The crane was supposed to lift the head of the reactor to expose the core, but according to Parks and the series, if the faulty crane malfunctioned and dropped its load on the core, the resulting damage could have caused a radioactive leak on par with that of the China syndrome. When Parks and two other employees, King and Ed Geishel, took their concerns to the higher-ups at GPU and the NRC, they were dismissed. Geishel was recommended for a psychological evaluation. Parks found marijuana placed in his car on the day of a random drug inspection. Someone later broke into his apartment and searched his files. The NRC's on-site coordinator, Lake Bennett, participates in the series and claims not to remember meeting Parks. He later said whatever Parks told him did not merit concern. I was satisfied that the crane was safe enough. Gravely concerned for the safety of family, Middletown, and the potentially statewide disaster zone, Parks took his records to the Government Accountability Project, then went public days before a vote would certify the crane's use. His disclosure and mounting public pressure caused the NRC to halt and then overhaul the cleanup process at 3 Mile Island. So the executive producer of the docuseries Meltdown first heard about Parks through lawyers at the Government Accountability Project, some of whom appeared in the series. While executive producing another project, the 2000 film Aaron Brockovich, starring Julia Roberts as a real-life whistleblower. It's taken nearly 20 years for some version of it to make the air. Parks and other whistleblowers were superheroes, she told The Guardian. They're the ones, one of the last bastions of the truth. I think they should have capes. They are amazing, she said. They protect people they've never met, and they protect thousands, if not millions of people. It's the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do. Now, Park's story has a relatively happy ending. The series does delve into his personal and emotional costs of his disclosure, but the damaged crane was not used. In 1983, the same year he came forward, Metropolitan Edison was indicted on criminal charges for falsifying safety reports before the accident. The company plea bargained included a $45,000 fine and a $1 million pledge to help emergency planning in the surrounding area. Still, in the 4 decades since, it hasn't gotten better for the whistleblowers. To go public now is a lot different than it was 10 years ago. It's a lot harder now. Whistleblowers aren't always rewarded for their actions. To this day, the official government record is that the radiation released at 3 Mile Island never reached levels dangerous to humans. The official death toll is 0. But local residents turned activists, several of whom appear in the series, say otherwise. The film cites a 1997 study by Stephen Wigg, who is an epidemiologist, which found cancer rates 2 to 3 times the average in areas downwind of the facility. In 2017, researchers at Penn State College of Medicine found that a certain type of thyroid cancer was common in people who had been near the plant after the accident. Several subjects in the series, including Parks and his ex-stepdaughter Nicole, who was 6 years old at the time of the disaster, have survived bouts of cancer or lost loved ones to it. No one can be sure it's related to radiation. Parks, who had throat cancer, was also a smoker, so there's always that, but that's why the NRC gets away with everything, he says. But the anecdotes points to more of a coincidence. Still, the project isn't about this project isn't about how is the cancer, who gets cancer, how many people get it, said Davison. Instead, the series argues holding industry and large corporations accountable for their actions. We are not, she said, they weren't coming from the point of the story to be a pro-nuclear standpoint. There are pros and cons and arguments on both sides, and lots of the characters that were interviewed for this, like Rick Parks, really believe that to solve our energy crisis, nuclear has to be in the mix. But there are consequences that have to be looked at. And when things go wrong, they can go wrong in horrible ways. So in the final episode of the docuseries, Park says, we'll never have a viable nuclear industry in this country until we take profit motive out of it. Now, that is a little bit more about that. And then let's see if there is any other interesting information. And then I have a little article I found that kind of talks about some of the people that were helping in the area, how, versus then versus now. Let's see. We already know that there were 2 nuclear reactors and that it really unfolded in a matter of seconds. So when the feed water pump failed to send water to the steam generator, it prompted both the turbine generator and the TMI-2 reactor itself to automatically shut down as a built-in safety precaution, a process that occurred in about 1 second. Let's see. Just trying to see if there's anything else I kind of missed in regards. So the 3 Mile Island accident actually happened 2 months into the term of the newly elected governor of Pennsylvania, Dick Thornburgh. He had only been in office 72 days when the crisis hit. He and then President Jimmy Carter toured the facility, and his steady hand, he notably did not issue a general evacuation. He himself stayed in central Pennsylvania, led him to be called a hero of the crisis. So, following his 2 terms, Thornburgh was appointed U.S. Attorney General by Ronald Reagan in 1988. And he continued to serve in that role under George H.W. Bush until 1991. And he later passed away at the age of 28 on December 31st, 2020. So I think that besides, let's see, there did because of this incident, an analysis of the accident's events, it led to widespread changes across the U.S. Commercial nuclear industry. The NRC implemented new and more stringent there I go again. Stringent. Sometimes words are hard for me. If you haven't noticed, regulations related to improved training, emergency response planning, as well as upgrades to plant designs and equipment requirements. Operators are now fully trained to understand the entire physics of the system. This knowledge makes them more equipped to use their operating knowledge and plant procedures to work through and manage unusual accident scenarios. The Institute of Nuclear Power Operations was established in 1979 by the nuclear industry to provide a unified industry approach to plant management, training, and operation to further enhance nuclear safety. The NRC expanded its international activities to share important technical upgrades with other countries. So, the Department of Energy currently collaborates with our international partners to better understand nuclear incidents across the world, like the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident. This analysis and lessons learned from these events support and continue safe, secure, and peaceful use of nuclear energy. So now we're going to get to the last little article that I found that I was actually, I don't want to say most interested in, but it kind of, from a perspective of, it's 40 years later and just the information that from people that actually, I don't want to say lived through it, but what their experience was living in that area. So there are several, if there is ever another accident at the, so there is a, Dr. Stacy Seidel knows exactly what she'll do with all 3,869 children in her care. She's the superintendent of York County's Northeastern School District. She will work with teachers and administration to pack those thousands of kids into buses and bring them to the district outside 3 Mile Island's 10-mile evacuation radius. But of course it's shut down now, but I guess they still said it'll be 10 more years before they completely get that, shut down, right, or entombed. All 8 of the northeastern schools are inside it. So she said, you can practice it as best case scenario, but we know is people will be scared. We have parents coming here like, give me my kids. Her job, she said, is to get our kids out safely and quickly. In March of 1979, Eric Fasick was 7 years old and attending first grade at Herman Avenue Elementary School in Lemoyne. He vividly remembers the day his teachers abruptly told him and his classmates to leave. The teachers came into the room and there was a mass confusion of sorts, he recalled. Everybody was sort of frustrated. Kids were asking questions and the teachers blatantly just said, get your things, go home. Fasick lived 4 blocks away. He walked home and then went back outside to play. So today, Fasick is the president of the Dauphin County Historical Society, which has an exhibit about the accident. He also recently published a book about the 3 Mile Island accident. He said during his research process, he realized his experience wasn't all that unique. There was absolutely no foreplanning, and it caught everyone sort of with our pants down. As we know, as I previously stated, the initial accident happened early Wednesday morning. As state and federal agencies tried to figure out how bad things were, information started trickling out to the public. Many people didn't wait for the evacuation order. Some families started packing up and leaving that day, and come Friday, there was an even bigger reason to go. Governor Dick Thornburgh, who had been receiving conflicting information all morning about the problem getting worse, got on TV. In the interest of taking every precaution, he said, I'm advising those who may be particularly susceptible to the effects of radiation, that is, pregnant women and preschool children, to leave the area within a 5-mile radius of 3 Mile Island facility until further notice. Mass care centers were set up for evacuees. One of them was in Hershey, and Dr. Joseph Tetline remembers it well. In 1979, Tetline was a 38-year-old physician at the University Hospital of Pennsylvania State at Hershey. He had done a stint in the Air Force and was on the hospital's disaster response team, and he was instructed to be the medical director at the evacuation center. He said he walked into the Hershey Park arena with his white coat on and very little idea of what to do. The arena, which had hosted a hockey game the night before, had its ice covered with particle board, and makeshift partitions were set up with cots inside. The doctor estimates the people who passed through the center over the next several days numbered in the thousands, but aside from talking to news crews, he didn't have much to do. Back in the area hospitals, though, there was a conundrum. All the patients were well enough to evacuate had done so, but to get anyone else out, they would have needed 400 ambulances. They only had 15. So, they improvised with some tractor trailers. Basically, we were going to take the trucks and a nurse with a flashlight in the back, and each patient would have 3 days' worth of medication, and then the truck would head off north and east, south and west, wherever there was a hospital that might be able to handle them. That was the extent of the plan. It didn't end up being necessary, but the doctor said the whole mess convinced everyone they needed to develop an actual strategy. You think? Anyway. So, Randy Padfield is the acting director of Pennsylvania's emergency management system. In 1979, there was about 135,000 people living within 10 miles of the plant, and now it's more than 230,000. But Padfield said there is also more data on how a radiation release would spread and which areas would be affected. That might allow for more conservative evacuation. There would not necessarily be the need to be able to do an entire radius around the plant. Potentially, we could have easily do targeted evacuations for that downwind plume. If a big evacuation is necessary, Padfield said it would be slow. There would be traffic control points where roads typically get backed up, and PEMA would be able to send alerts and direct the right directions right to people's mobile phones. Of course, he noted, technology sometimes creates new problems. There's going to be a lot of misinformation that's put out there on social media. The key is to actually monitor social media, and we try to correct any misinformation out there. Basically, he said, it's important to stay flexible. Even the best strategies can go awry. Now, Seidel, the Northeastern superintendent, can relate to that. She said she doesn't always think about what would happen if there was another problem, but the idea does lurk in the back of her mind. There are things you can't dwell on. Having a level of responsibility. I often say to people, I know I have it, but if I dwell on it, it's too long, it becomes overwhelming. That's why she said it's comforting to have a plan. The district is due for its next evacuation drill in about a month. So I know it didn't kind of go through like the like blow by blow of the actual disaster. I don't even really know if there's really anything out there that would actually do that. Other than that, at 4 o'clock in the morning, reactor 2 started to melt down. So, what do you guys think? Were any of you guys around at the time? Any of you remember any of the information on your local television about it? I would have been 3 years old at the time, so I don't remember much. And that would mean that my youngest brother, Ed, was 2 months old. So, yeah, that is my story, or my kind of little education on the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident that happened in Pennsylvania in 1979. So did you guys find that interesting? I actually started reading a lot of articles about it after I watched the docuseries, because I really like kind of knowing different perspectives. And I kind of feel like the whistleblower, Mr. Parks, kind of should be hailed a hero. Even in the docuseries, just knowing he had a lot of loss, which isn't actually discussed in the information that I gave you. His first wife passed away, and then, he ended up, not being able to stay with his second wife, which was the stepdaughter that had cancer, just because he was so afraid something would happen to them. So, yeah. Sounds like he's been through a lot and should definitely be hailed. Probably an American hero. I mean, veterans are American heroes already. But, he saved more lives, I'm sure. So that's going to be my whip and chat. I did actually end up recording a lot more time of me diamond painting, just in case I babbled on and on. But I'm not going to need it. I need to get off of here anyway. I need to do day 3 of Dark and Creepy Diamond Paintings Horror Crush event. I have to do that challenge for today. So that's my video. Please don't forget to like and comment. And as always, have yourself a nice day or night, whatever it is for you. Take care. Happy diamond painting. And until my next video, bye.